Chronometry calibrated. The gateway will open in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Analyzing data. Likelihood of parallel universes now at 13%. Continuing analysis of the many worlds hypothesis.
Internet, the final frontier. These are the episodes of the Many Worlds Hypothesis. Its continuing mission: to watch strange new movies, to seek out new franchises and new entries in them, to boldly podcast where no one has podcasted before. Welcome, everyone. I'm Gayfesh. Joining me as always is the lovely DemonMama.
Hello.
And Moss.
Hello.
And this season on the Many Worlds Hypothesis, we are doing some Star Treks. And if you're watching on YouTube, you may notice the fancy new overlay.
Yeah.
So I figured we'd get into the holiday spirit.
The holiday that we're inventing called Watch All the Star Trek Movies.
Exactly.
I'm so here for it. That's a holiday for me, for sure.
And of course, where to begin but the beginning of the human adventure, as the movie ends with. But we're going to be talking the TOS movies, and we're starting with Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Now, we all watched the director's cut, which is the one that I would recommend everyone watch, because the director, Robert Weiss, was never satisfied with the original theatrical release, as were like the general populace and critics. They didn't really like the original theatrical release either. Robert Weiss was like rushed to get this out. They had run out of money on the VFX budget. They were trying to do this movie was like, it was ballooning in cost and everything like that. And Robert Weiss is not a hack. Robert Weiss was the editor on Citizen Kane. He's got like a resume, and like 5 years before he died, he's like, you know what? Give me money. I'm gonna fix this. So I just Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the director's cut. That's the version that you watch. That's the version we're reviewing. Who among us had seen this one before? Besides me, obviously.
I had seen it a very long time ago and remembered very little about it. So this was an almost fresh watch, but not quite. I'm
similar. I'm certain that I've watched these movies at some time in the past, but I did not remember enough of it to, it basically was like watching it for the first time.
Right. So a little backstory is that, Star Trek was canceled in '69. Now they did have an animated series in the early '70s that was running, that was basically like treated as another season, because it had all the voice actors were all just the cast from TOS. They had all the writers. So it was basically just more of the same, just with cheap animation. But, the fans were keeping it alive. Conventions were going. Fanzines were being published. And it got big enough. They're like, you know what? We can do another series. So they were developing Star Trek Phase 2. And then Star Wars came out. And Paramount was like, we can make a movie. So you may have noticed that half of this movie is just everyone staring into space and looking at the stars and all of the things and all the spaceships and everything, just slow tracking shots, which gave the movie, I think, a fair nickname of the slow motion picture. And
that's totally fair. I'm glad that you brought it up so that I didn't have to bring it up. It's like it almost made this movie unwatchable in certain parts.
What?
It is okay. Yeah, no, we'll be happy to debate this, but it's my personal opinion. I don't know this for a fact, but considering that they took the plans that they had for Phase 2, the TV show, and then they took the pilot script for that and converted that into this movie. It's my opinion that they really didn't expand it out, that it was just they took an hour-long pilot and put it into a 2-hour movie. And that's why there's so many shots of just like, look at the space thing, look at our budget. Nobody has to say anything. We didn't write anything for this bit.
Yeah. Just, I don't even know. Like, if you were to take all of those special effects shots, which so watching old movies, like the pacing is just different. I watched Alien not too long ago, similar time frame, long movies, lots of like letting the scene breathe. So it's really different coming to it from a modern viewing audience, like where we're used to like things are punchy, things are moving, things are going. And even with the special effects shots in space, like the way that we do special effects now, because it's all on the computer, like and because of, again, of like the fast pacing of scenes nowadays, each VFX shot might only get like a couple seconds on screen before we're switching to a different viewing angle or, shifting to a different part of the scene. So it's like, I want to give it fair credit. The effects are amazing for 1979.
To be clear, the effects that you are seeing are the director's cut effects.
So they were different before.
It's still mostly, like the original footage, the original model stuff, but there was digital effects done because this remaster was in 2001. So technology had advanced quite a bit since then. And so there is some stuff that's been touched up with CGI or stuff like that. It doesn't look like CGI. It looks like very gorgeous classical VFX. It feels
I'm sure
more
a lot
like
of it is
something.
Miniatures. Like any shots we see of the ship, like miniatures, compositing, like some of those things that if you know what to look for, like you can kind of see it. But like you're totally right though. I had the same thought of like, this is just a Star Trek episode with very, very long, look at how pretty this is scenes. And it's like, that's great for that audience. My partner was just talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey. And it's a similar thing where like, it was a great movie in its time. But as a modern viewer trying to watch it, it's like pulling teeth, just sitting through very long, look at the thing in space shots that just doesn't work anymore.
To quote George Lucas, who should have remembered this and known better, but a visual effect without a story is a very boring thing. And I think Hollywood has, for the most part, taken that to heart. Now, a lot of what they do is still slop, but that's why they don't just be like, okay, the film is going to hinge on the VFX. The film has to hinge on the story, and the VFX have to propel that story.
Totally.
And I think sits kind of in a middle ground. I actually do quite like the story. Out of all of the Star Trek movies that I have seen, this is the Star Trekiest, but it is a little over-reliant on the, to be fair, very beautiful VFX. But it takes a lot out of, like, if you had cut those down, like I see a version of this movie that is an hour and a half.
That's what I was going to say.
It's a lot punchier, but I think there is also something to be said for allowing the VFX to breathe, allowing the grandeur to be taken in, because I think that is part of it. And that's something that a punchier edit would have lost.
Yeah. I mean, and the set pieces of like, looking at this thing and the grand swell of the band and orchestra, like it definitely has an emotional effect. Yeah, totally. Like, props to it. And like, again, to the 2001: A Space Odyssey, that is the musical accompaniment for that kind of scale, the grandness of it. And it does have an effect. It just has less of an effect if you are 45 years later.
Sure. Huh. And also just to speak to the music, like, this set the tone for Star Trek music for decades to come. I genuinely believe that the motion picture score is like one of the most influential pieces of music written in the 20th century. And, like, I mean, we all know
the sound design is phenomenal.
Well, a lot of the sound design too was from the director's cut, but the score is original. And we all know the TNG theme, which came from this. Actually, I was noticing that the Paramount Plus subtitles were identifying that theme as "Life is a Dream," which is interesting because if you look at the score album for this film, it's just called like opening titles or something like that. But Jerry Goldsmith also does the score for Star Trek V, and Star Trek V has a motif. There's a bit at the beginning where Kirk, McCoy, and Spock are doing rounds. They're trying to get Spock to do rounds. They're trying to sing "Row, row, row your boat," but Spock gets hung up on the line. He's like, "Life is not a dream." And in that score, the main theme is called "Life is a Dream." So it's interesting that they would go back and just call that score that, because like, I've been a Trekkie my entire life, and I've never thought of that theme as being called Life is a Dream. So it was weird to see that there. Anyway, I feel like I have been dominating, but this is my special interest. DemonMama, you've been uncharacteristically quiet.
Yeah, I've been trying to sort of collect myself as to how to approach this, because I love this movie. I thought it was gorgeous. I thought it was incredible. And there was so much that I loved about this movie. I would not want it to be any shorter. I didn't like. I don't know. I guess I disagreed with at least for my taste with a lot of the things that were said about what would improve this movie. I think that the slow and sweeping awe shots and the way that the camera is used plays very well into the theme of this movie. There's a shot in particular that that really stood out to me. There's this portion where they're inside of the they've gone into the third level or whatever. It's right before they go and actually discover the truth of V'ger. And the camera is going very slowly, just going from person to person in the room and basically just checking all of their faces as they react to these things, which I noticed is a recurring theme in this movie, is a lot of attention given to people trying to understand one another's emotional state via their faces, which is obviously that's a key part of the human experience, but also that's part of this movie. There's this slow and attentive focus on presenting a very human centric experience of how would you perceive a space. And I'm not saying that obviously every movie has a camera, which is sort of presumed to be the viewer at all times, but a lot of movies, especially big blockbusters and the most common high special effects movies now, have a very, I would say, a detached camera, a camera that will fly anywhere and appear anywhere and be inside anything, and just teleport boop, 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 boop from place to place to place. Whereas this movie is all very focused on you are a person standing on the bridge, looking around at the people around you, taking in the world as a human, which is the thesis statement of the movie, is there's something special about the human experience that isn't efficient, that isn't logical, but that allows us to surpass and step beyond logic, and step beyond what can just be collated as data.
Well, and that's Spock's journey through this as well. Spock was at the start of the film undergoing the Kolinar, which was to purge all emotion and embrace pure logic. And he's stopped because he feels V'ger, who is the culmination of that, who has no emotion, who is pure logic and can't even stop to consider an experience outside its own, that because it is a living machine, its creator must be a living machine. There's actually a line in one of the versions. There's three versions of this movie. There was the theatrical release, then there was a longer cut for TV audiences where they just threw in a bunch of deleted scenes and had extended scenes, but there wasn't really any concern for pacing there, so that's generally considered the worst version of the movie. Unless you're a completionist and just want to see everything that was filmed. And there's a line that Decker says in one of the versions that says, "We all create God in our own image." And so, of course, that's how V'ger perceives it. And it's only once V'ger is able to understand and step outside itself that it doesn't see these carbon units as an infestation, but as another form of life to quite literally be embraced. And you have Spock, who famously non-emotional, shedding a tear for V'ger, who is even further gone than he was.
Yes.
And he sees V'ger as a brother. I love it.
Yeah, I like too how there is this recurring theme throughout the movie of their analytic technology and general systematized analytic approaches failing. Sensors fail, probes fail, even V'ger's probe functionally fails. And there's all this weird clinical invasive, they're both kind of poking into each other in these weird and invasive ways. You're literally like the ship is flying inside of the body of V'ger, and you start at the beginning with the most aggressive approach of the Klingons just literally shooting at something they don't understand. And there's all these different stages. There's a part that struck me where like when the V'ger probe version of Alia, Ilia, there we go. Of Ilia like arrives, they're like, we need to take you into the medical bay and do an examination. And it's just like, it's so cold and clinical and like objectifying in like a very weird way. And like, sure, they're able to discover some things, but they don't really make progress. And the way that they finally make progress is by connecting on an emotional and mental level, like with Spock going way out, going in and saying like, I'm going to open myself completely to this other being, and this other being is going to open itself to me. And then of course this culminates in the end with the literal union of the machine and the human. I love that aspect of this movie, that like every bit that happens is kind of like reinforcing this theme of like the humanity, and that real connection is what matters. Yeah, it's great.
I feel like I should clarify that I did really like this movie. I just really liked it when it was engaging. And like, I don't disagree that like, yes, this is a very human-centered thing. And like, if it was your first time ever seeing something in space, like we can imagine that when we see full screen something happening in space, that this is functionally what we are seeing on the viewer in the bridge. So like, for an audience that's never seen that before, really taking a lot of time to show it makes perfect sense. I don't have any problem with lingering looks on people's faces, because I still like the human face and like seeing the changes of expression as the artist, the actor portrays a very subtle emotion. Like one of my favorite scenes probably was when they bring the probe of Ilia into her chambers and they put on her little headband, and like she's looking at Will. She calls him Will for the first time, and they touch each other. And then, someone else, Bones or somebody, brings the attention back to like, we have a mission to focus on here. And then you can see Ilia's face kind of go from this very tenderness to like resetting into a more neutral face of like, I am a robot. I have a task I must accomplish. So like the performances are amazing. And I love that human element of this, that, so many of these characters are going through a human struggle, like Kirk wanting desperately to be a star captain again and kind of forcing his way in a way that other people do not appreciate.
There is so much of Kirk's story that is like, well, there's a line that Uhura says when there's an ensign who's like complaining about this, and she's like, Ensign, our chances of successfully completing this mission may have just doubled.
Yeah.
But Kirk doesn't know the ship. It's been completely refit. He's like, when they're trapped in the wormhole and he orders to fire phasers, if Decker hadn't been there to countermand that order, something
just destroy the ship.
Something that Kirk tries to berate him for. But and McCoy is just like, Jim, you're pushing these people. You've been sitting behind your desk, and okay, a perfect encapsulation of Kirk's problem. The transporter scene where the two crew members
oh my
are
God,
killed.
I was going to bring that up.
Horrific.
He pushes Rand aside to do the transporter himself. He is an admiral. He's been commander-in-chief of Starfleet for 2.5 years. What does he know about operating the transporter controls versus the transporter chief? And then he consoles her afterwards, saying there was nothing she could have done. It's like, there was nothing you could have done, man. The last time you operated a transporter was probably over a decade ago. Like, if he hadn't done that, maybe Rand could have saved them. Probably not. Because they already had the thing where like he had to beam up. He had to beam up to the station and not to the Enterprise because their transporters were having an issue, and it seems obvious that was the issue.
I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up, because what I noticed was that there were 2 scenes back to back where the captain was directly interfacing with an engineering problem. Because Decker, when we first meet him, is personally removing and directing the replacement of something to do with their transponder or whatever thing. Like the malfunction occurs as a direct effect of like, okay, we can see this part needs to be replaced. So I just thought that was interesting that like both of them took this hands-on approach to problems that are it's supposed to be pretty outside their scope of like neither of them are engineers, neither of them work.
I would dispute that with Decker because Decker became captain of the Enterprise to oversee this refit, which means that most of the job that he is doing while in command of this ship is an engineering a hurdle. So I imagine he probably has more technical expertise than leadership expertise. So it makes sense that he would be in engineering. But yeah, that's Kirk's whole thing. And like, I was actually sitting here in my last rewatch of it going, does Kirk actually do anything to help further the mission? Or is he just trying to let past glory force him into remaining in a position that he is no longer qualified for, that he thinks he knows better than the people who are doing their jobs? And
he does bluff them into the thing at the very end.
That was it.
That's kind of it.
It was the.
Well, I think that's kind of when he comes online.
Yeah,
like
I think that's what he did.
Yeah, there's like this part there's this moment or series of moments, I suppose, later in the film where it feels like Kirk kind of has an awakening as to what's been going wrong, where for the first part of the movie, he's like insecure and defensive and trying to like cram his way into situations over and over again. And then like there's a couple of scenes in the middle of the movie that I really enjoyed, which were like, they were like lovably awkward in the way that I was like, I think I said to one of my partners, I was like, I don't think that like people would write a scene quite like this in most movies that I've seen in like recent memory, because it's like, it's too awkward on screen. But it works great in my opinion. It's like there's this part where he's like, Decker, and then he like hesitates. He's like, actually correct. You're actually correct. And he's like, you see him like work
in
through
front
that
of everybody.
in front of everybody. And it's like, it's cringe, but it's like, I like that they show that because you see him kind of like trying and somewhat failing, but still like making, okay, I'm going in the right direction. And then 30 minutes to an hour later, he realizes, oh, I've been getting in the way of all of these people who have all this expertise. I need to like trust them and connect with them, even down to like, it's a little bit, it's a little bit subtle. They don't like put a whole lot of like focus on it like they do with some of the other themes. But like even with his relationship with Spock, where there's all this like weird distrust of Spock, and some of it's like completely understandable because of another thing I'll talk about in a minute, but it's like he has to come to understand like, oh, I can trust Spock. Spock is my friend. He knows what he's doing here, and like he won't tell me exactly what he's doing because it's too complex to communicate. But once he gets to that point of being able to trust Spock, he's literally like, they're like, oh, we could pull him back with a tractor beam, and he's like, no, actually don't pull him back. Let him go. Yeah. Because he's like, I need to trust the people around me and find where I am the best. And then shortly after that, his position is to go, oh, okay, I know how I can work with this situation to make it the best and come up with something that nobody else was thinking of, which is this diplomatic gambit with an alien intelligence.
I thought that Spock was really interesting in this film. Like, I guess kind of the whole character arc of Spock throughout any individual episode that focuses on him, or the whole show, or the whole whatever, like his whole thing is like, I'm trying really hard to take out emotion, and then by the end I realize emotion is not so bad actually. But it's like he really tried to dedicate himself at the beginning of the movie to the Vulcan practice of eliminating all emotion. So he clearly left Starfleet probably around the same time Kirk did, focused on that, and then starts to have this emotional response to V'ger, and then comes back to the Enterprise where everybody is like, I'm so happy to see you. I love you so much. And he's like, I can't, I literally can't even be on this bridge right now with all of you people because I actually am not able to compartmentalize my emotions in that way. And so some of the awkwardness that I perceived was like, the scene with the three of them in the private quarters where Kirk's like, will you please just fucking sit down? Just sit down, be normal for half a second. Yeah. So it's not just distrust around like, what is Spock's purpose here? What are his intentions? But also like the connection of a friendship that the other person just seems unwilling to reciprocate. I see the spurk everywhere now. I didn't used to.
It's so it is so thick in this movie. It is like the longing gazes, the tender hand holding in sickbay. It's this is like, it's such a romance between them, and like like I don't understand how people could have gone so long and been like, what? No, come on, it's homophobia is why people couldn't see it. Like, that's it.
Premise is true.
I think even Gene Roddenberry had tried to quash it a little bit in the novelization of this movie.
Sure.
But like, nah, man, I saw that performance. They love each other.
Oh yeah.
I know what I saw.
Yeah, like I don't, and like I am not like one of those people who is just like, oh well, Gene Roddenberry is the master of what Star Trek is. Like, he created it, sure, but like he wasn't the only one, and he is not Leonard Nimoy or William Shatner. He was not giving them that performance. They were doing that on their own. There are other writers. There are all sorts of creatives involved in Star Trek. So Star Trek isn't like any one singular vision.
Of course.
Yeah, and I mean, and also things. Even if it's not intentional, like it can arise nonetheless. Like the love that's shared between them and the intimacy of that love and the nature of that love is it's intense, and it's portrayed regardless of it. Like it comes together regardless of initial intent. Like, so yeah, I agree with you.
Now, I will also say that there's certain elements of Spock's story that I think take on a metatextual element, because before this was a movie, when it was in development as Phase 2, Leonard Nimoy was not going to return. And some people have misinterpreted Leonard Nimoy as having not liked Star Trek anymore. He wrote his 1975 autobiography was titled I Am Not Spock. And I think it was just he didn't want his career to be solely defined by Star Trek, which I can understand. Totally. For DemonMama fans out there, for a long time all of my music had been like, I'm a musician. Not a lot of people know that because I don't do it as much these days, but I wrote the music for this podcast. And for a long time, all of the music that I wrote, nobody was crediting any of it. It was something that I wrote in 30 minutes called the DemonMama bathroom song that everyone gives me credit for. And for a long time, I was like, guys, I literally didn't put effort into that at all, but it took time, and I had to see it from outside myself and see how other people were appreciating it to fully like come to terms with it. And I think
why people find it so funny and charming and
right. But the standoffishness that Spock has when he comes aboard the Enterprise, the fact that he was going to purge himself of all emotion, I think there is some meta commentary on Leonard Nimoy's journey. And that's a journey that is still ongoing, because I'm not spoiling this for you. We've all seen Wrath of Khan before, right?
Yes,
at some point.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So like it is known that Spock dies. Sorry if you are listening to this.
No, you got to bleep that out. You got to bleep that out for the viewers.
Listen.
The babies.
No one's ever really gone.
No,
Leonard Nimoy.
Gotta bleep that out for the viewers.
Leonard Nimoy did want to still get away from Star Trek, and that's why he had himself killed off in Wrath of Khan. Obviously, that didn't take. But, that's a conversation that we can continue in this season of the podcast.
Well, maybe Leonard Nimoy would be encouraged to hear that whenever, despite everything, and despite all of my attachment to Star Trek over the years, whenever I think of Leonard Nimoy, the first thing I think of is Bilbo Baggins, the bravest little hobbit of them all. Which is some random song that Leonard Nimoy did 1,000,000 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. The funny thing is, like, I know about that. I've never listened to it. I just know that he did the Ballad of Bilbo Baggins.
It is maximal goof, and
I'm sure
it's forever stuck in my head.
But also, just to like try and talk a little bit more about Phase 2, because Phase 2 was being developed as a TV show. Once they finally did make another Star Trek TV show, once they made TNG, there was a lot of groundwork that they had laid in the series Bible for Phase 2 that they just brushed off and repurposed. You might notice the theme of a first officer who has a prior relationship with an exotic alien beauty who is also serving aboard the ship, who has certain empathic powers, and whose first name is Will. And
True.
But also to go back to the Leonard Nimoy thing, because Leonard Nimoy wasn't going to be returning, they were going to have a new science officer who was going to be a full Vulcan. His name was Zahn. And because he's full Vulcan, he doesn't have that internal conflict. He doesn't have a human half that he's had to wrestle with. But he has intense fascination with humanity because he is an outsider. And it is his primary arc through the series Bible of Phase 2 that he wants to learn more about humanity and become closer connected to humanity. Am I describing something that sounds familiar to a certain character from TNG?
Perhaps portrayed by Brent Spiner.
Perhaps.
Yeah. Another emotionless being.
Who's actually full of emotion.
I love Data so much.
I love Data too. But anyway, there's all sorts of, listen, like anybody who wants to interrupt me at any point, please go ahead. But
there's another meta thing that I wanted to touch on that was like a theme that I noticed throughout this movie of things that appear familiar being unfamiliar beneath the surface. There's like, of course, there's all of the reunions that occur where people visually and audibly recognize someone else, but things have changed somehow that has to be explored in a way that goes beyond like our immediate, surface sensory reads. Every character that's introduced, you see that like there's been like, Scotty and Kirk meet each other. And immediately they're like trying to catch up and find out what's happened. The Enterprise itself is completely different, but it's this familiar space that has changed somehow that you can't quite tell. Kirk has changed. Spock is the one that's like the first character where it's like really shocking, where it's like everybody's like, Spock, we're happy to see you. And he's just like, nope. And they're like trying to bridge that
to the beginning of his arc. Yeah.
And they're all like, there's that scene where that you mentioned where they're all three together is like the perfect like encapsulation of this, where it's like two people who are like, we should be like chumming it up and like and bonding and whatever, and it's not happening. And then of course we have that happen again. Very, it's repeated again and hit even harder with the Alia returning as a not Alia. Looks like Ilia, sorry, sounds like Ilia, but is not, definitively not Ilia. And that is like, it's this recurring theme that goes through it that I can't help but feel is like a bit meta as well, where it's like, this is something new and something different that is connected to the past, but it's been 10 years since the last series, since the last like live action series, since these people were on screen together, and it's going to be different. It's not going to be the same. And, that then later being followed up by the next generation, carrying forward that it's, I don't know. I feel like there's that aspect of a meta analysis as well, of this, like revisiting this theme of like the familiar being unfamiliar. What is like on the surface you might recognize as like, something that you might expect to have not changed, it actually has changed, and that's okay. And it's okay and important to like learn and connect with that.
It's interesting because I think that the story, you're totally right. It sets up that expectation of like familiar things being alien. But then at the very end, they twist it around. This thing that seems very unfamiliar, it turns out, is from Earth. And so like, I think that's part of what makes that punch so much harder, that twist of like, oh, this thing that we thought was incomprehensible and alien is actually quite familiar.
When the fuck did we launch Voyagers 3 through 5? What happened to them?
Right.
Well, I think too, it's like, I don't even know.
Demand answers, government.
I don't even know if it's so much of a twist, just as it is a follow through on the theme, which is just that like we sent out this probe it went into a black hole, and we can see that it's Voyager. It has the plate, but it isn't. It's V'ger. It's become its own thing. It literally gains sentience. And so it is like there is a connection here to the past, but it's grown and become something new. And I think that also plugs into like this, where Spock says like, oh, it's a child like reaching out, but so are all of the people on the ship. That's like the thing that they bond on, is that they're all reaching out into the unknown. The film, of course, ends with, let's head out that away, and it's just like, humanity is still reaching out into the unknown, trying to find meaning and purpose and fulfillment, and we do it together. I do think those align well.
The real secret of Star Trek is that everything is human. You go out and you meet all these fantastical aliens. They're all human. They're all an aspect of us. They're, Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry is very obviously a humanist, and that element of humanism that's probably the strongest single line running through all of the franchise. There is a little symbol that it's a Vulcan symbol called the Idic, which is like a triangle with a circle on top that they had invented because they wanted to sell merchandise. But Idic stands for infinite diversity in infinite combinations, and that right there, that's like that is the core of Star Trek. That is its thesis. Now, the rest of the movies are probably less about this exploration and more about revenge plots. But that's, we'll get there when we get there.
When we get to Wrath of Khan, it's definitely going to be a big change of pace, for sure.
And part of that, too, is because this film went so over budget and was like Robert Wise felt like he had just delivered a work print to the premiere. And Gene Roddenberry ended up taking the blame for most of these cost overruns and everything. And Paramount had lost confidence in him, so they took Star Trek away from him. So while he was involved in TNG, the movies, the movies are a completely different thing. He doesn't have anything to do with them after this one.
Wow.
Which might explain the differences in plot focus in the other ones. Yeah.
I still think there's a core of him, though, that's obviously there. It's baked into the DNA.
I mean, you can't make a Star Trek without it in some way reflecting on that. Even the new ones with all their like action scenes and stuff are like still about like human focused problems in an intergalactic situation. I love the commentary here on the theme of like reconnecting over time and things having changed. And like, I think that the relationship between Will and Ilea is like a pretty great example of that. Like they go away and they come back. Why does she just straight up cite her oath of celibacy? Why? Is it because Kirk is known to be a sleazy guy? Like,
well, I was just like, I had it written in my notes. Hi, welcome to the Enterprise. Hello, Captain. I promise I will not fuck. And
just like, why?
I think if you go into supplemental materials, I think it's more so that like the Deltans are a highly sexual species, and there's almost like later in Star Trek they reveal that Orion slave girls actually have these very powerful pheromones that they use to control men, so they're posing as slaves, but they're actually the ones in control. And I think there was probably some element of that Deltan sexuality is so overpowering that it could be like a security threat.
It could impact unit cohesion. Yeah.
And so I think that's why she has an oath of celibacy on record, I imagine, Deltans. And I think that there might be, I don't know if it's in like the longer cut or if it was in the novelization or something, but Ilea says at some point that she would never take advantage of a sexually immature race. So like she basically sees, which is interesting though, considering that she had a relationship with Decker.
Unclear whether it was sexual though.
I also think that this movie is cooking with a certain sauce with regard to the approach to sexuality, where it is all innuendo and there's a lot of dancing around the subject and indirect sexuality that is like it's playing a game with the audience. I mean, you know, there's like the shower scene where it's like, oh, like the being portals into the shower and is naked, and then like Kirk puts
magic
on
clothes on her,
the magic clothes with the magic clothes that are like incredibly revealing and sexy. And then like there's like the line that lots of people talk about, but it's the one where it's like the body is replicated perfectly down even to the moisture of the eyes. And it's like, you're immediately just like, it's just impossible to not go, oh, the moisture of the eyes is correct. What else is correct?
What else is
like
moist?
obvious what's going on. And it's like, they even like cut to a shot of like Decker being like, And it's just like, so there's this dancing around that. It kind of makes sense that like, there's all this like, yeah, go ahead.
It's really interesting that just the way that the rating system has changed, because when this film was released, now the director's cut, they submitted it to the MPAA to get a PG rating, but this film had a G rating at release. And nowadays a kids movie only gets a G rating if it's animated. If it's live action, they go for a PG. It like G just means movies for babies now. When the G stands for general audiences. So yeah,
depictions of real people. That's inappropriate for real people.
Right. It is interesting though. Because sexuality is very much on display in this film. I would say to a degree, core to it.
I want to take that a little bit further. Having been reading some sci-fi recently, you can start to see some weird things that sci-fi allows us to express our anxieties about. So they penetrate this alien's ship.
They literally use that word.
Through an aperture.
Orifice, they call it.
Yeah, and there's a baby inside of a womb. And then there's the weird like joining of the two, like Will and the probe at the end. Like that is sexual. And they create a new life. Like there are some heavy, weird sexual themes in sci-fi because we're answering questions about like, what is life? How do we relate to other forms of life, and et cetera? And like, if you're really looking for it, you know, it's not subtle.
The line was, he successfully penetrated the alien's interior.
Yeah.
As they're going into this giant space sphincter. Like,
they literally say orifice like 3 times. I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's not subtle.
But it's like, it was also really funny. I was watching with 2 of my partners last night, and my partner was like, why does the Enterprise look like a sex toy? And then later, one of my other partners was like, I thought it looked like a toothbrush. That's just like, that's so funny. I don't know. But it does. It does kind of look like that. It's got the
rabbit.
Yeah, it's got the Hitachi magic wand vibe going on.
Yeah.
I do love that design though. Like, I think
I love it. It's great.
Like, obviously they were going to have to update the look of it for the big screen because the original model, which is on display at the Smithsonian, was the original TOS model, not the movie model. That one was obviously made for a 1960s television set, so it's not as detailed. It would not hold up to scrutiny at higher definition, but they did such a, like, obviously they changed it. They changed the shape of the nacelles. The nacelles in the original series were round. Here they're more boxy, but it just, it looks so good. And like, that's why I'm not going to complain about the long tracking shots. Like, you know, you get 3 minutes of Kirk eye fucking the Enterprise, and you understand.
I love that.
To the point that it literally ends with the shuttle pod's little chode connecting in at the end. Like, I think that was on purpose.
I love that. I love that whole scene. I also, like, part of what I love about it too is just like, I don't know, it feels like it's proud of what they've done. It's showing off, like, there's pride on all levels, from the fact that, like, Kirk is like, that's my ship I'm gonna captain, that's the ship that I did captain, like, I'm proud of this thing, to, like, you know, Scotty being like, I've been working on this for 18 months, to the filmmakers being like, look at this beautiful thing that we've created. I love that they, like, spend all that time just, like, soaking in the pride of accomplishment. It's cool to me. I like that aspect of this. Also, mildly, well, I guess similar in with regard to effects, I love all of the interior V'ger ship shots, like the interior body shots, whatever the like, not the actual probe itself, but like all the stuff that they're going in. There's like the big mechanical eye and these weird jelly blobs with spikes on them with lightning going between. Every single area they go through is just so gorgeous and striking. I love it. I love how much like time is spent showing off all the creativity that went into creating this alien environment. It's great.
I also want to talk to like the atmospheric effects, the gas cloud effects themselves, because there's a very, you know, ordered look to them, which I imagine is just in part due to technical limitations of how they were going to be able to depict such a gaseous cloud. But giving it that regular repeating visual, that kind of like fractal design to it, gives it more of an alien thing. Like, it's not just some passing nebula. It is in fact an ordered structure.
Yeah. Hyperlogically constructed.
Which I think just adds to it. Like, I imagine it came out of technical limitations of trying to portray gaseous volumes for the big screen, but I think it looks great.
Yeah, I don't know. I really love this movie. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to say something about the did I mention this already? The sound design, like the choices, all of the sound that's used to depict and represent V'ger with the like slowed down guitar string drums.
Yeah.
I think they're piano strings. I'm not sure exactly what they are, but
whatever they are,
obviously it's some kind of string.
Yeah, some kind of metal string. And I really love that at the very tail end, as they're going into the like final chamber, that you hear one of those and it like bends from like this continual discordant like hit that we get throughout the whole movie into this like very harmonious, warm note. I really love it. It was like, I caught that at the end. I'm like, oh, I love that. It's like, as they're coming together, this like scary metal thrumming turns into something that we recognize as like warm, like a warm and melodic note. It's great. I absolutely love that. The sound design in this movie is so good. Also, the like scene where they're in the wormhole and the scene where they're getting like scanned, where it's like the sound is, all their voices are distorted in really weird ways alongside with the visual distortions. It all works so well.
I love the wormhole scene, just the light trailing off of everyone's faces and stretching out.
Photon torpedoes.
Which, it's funny because like that sequence itself is really more of just like a D&D random encounter. And like it doesn't like ultimately serve I guess there's the aspect of Kirk having to learn to accept Decker's corrections because Decker is more familiar with this ship. So there is that aspect of it. But in terms of like, this wormhole has nothing to do with V'ger, unless we can assume that that's the wormhole because it's so close to Earth. Maybe that's the wormhole that V'ger fell through to get to the machine world. But beyond that, it is just a random encounter. But yeah, the effects, they're very interesting. And like, you don't really see like the way they depict that, you really don't see anything else in Star Trek like it. It is a very unique kind of a sequence.
Yeah, and it allows this sort of time dilation for each beat in the scene to breathe. Like, 10 seconds. Like, I know that wasn't 10 seconds.
But it was slowed down, so it was their 10 seconds. Like, yeah.
I will say something that I just kind of realized about this movie, which is like something that probably a lot of us think about but maybe don't put words in, is like so many of these relationships are about seeking connection. And it's really embodied completely, like at the end when V'ger disconnects the Wi-Fi to receive the information or to send the information. Like Kirk is seeking connection with his past it's like, bro, you've only been out for 2 years. Can you calm down? Like, how are you this stir crazy from sitting at a desk after only 2 years? But Kirk is seeking connection with his past He seeks connection with Scotty and Bones, but most of all, he's desperate for that connection with Spock. Will and Ilea are desperate for their connection with each other. And then like V'ger is desperate to connect on a profound level. Like it's not good enough for me to just tell you the results of my experiments or the results of the data I've been collecting. Like I need functionally a human connection. Like I need to feel attached to somebody in the way that like, yeah, toddlers come seeking their parents, because once you give them that comfort, they are then paradoxically more able to be independent. So I just think that's a really interesting theme, along with like the, discovering new things about ourselves and about other beings. We all kind of on a human level are just like seeking connection and recognition within the other.
I think also it's interesting too, in that same way that like the way that Kirk basically does a kind of indirect gambit to get them closer, like, oh, I will only tell, I can't transmit this to a probe, like I need to go in person. Then like V'ger replicates that by breaking the cable and being like, no, you actually have to come like punch it in yourself, put in the final sequence yourself. It's like, oh, I'm learning how to what is important to connect. I need to actually have this. I actually have realized that I also need this level of intimacy, and I don't want it to be transmitted through a probe. Give it to me directly, I love that.
I just want to also say, as a complete aside that has nothing to do with anything we've talked about so far, transporters, how the fuck they work. Like, there's the trouble with transporters video that CGP Grey made forever ago. And there's just like this horrific accident. And by the way, we don't get very much emotional gravitas on any of the several deaths that happen in this movie. I do feel that was kind of missed.
I mean, that is kind of par for the course for Star Trek up until later series.
I guess that's how you be a G movie, is be like, oh, these two people just died horrifically in a transporter accident. Off screen, you get to hear their wails of pain of being in the middle of a werewolf transformation, I guess.
And you hear the line, whatever came back didn't live long, fortunately.
Oh yeah, fortunately, he said. Yeah,
like it was. Oh god, they better die. That's torture. Existence is bad.
Do you store their data at the point of sending? You must. There has to be a copy that you then transmit. It's like, are they sending the actual molecules of the being there? That can't be the case. It has to be a reconstruction with different molecules. That's why people don't want to take the transporter. Anyway, Cuddy Sark.
McCoy is very reticent to.
Yeah, was that the first time he's ever used one?
No,
I don't know.
He used it on the original series all the time. I'm trying to remember if he was reticent to use it in the original series or if they just
someone was. I can't remember who.
But the transporter, how it works, has not always been consistent in Star Trek. But you are correct. Yeah. There is a pattern buffer. And in fact, there's an episode of TNG where
I was just thinking of that.
Encounter a sentient nebula that mind controls Picard to beam out and join with it. And like his molecules are scattered. They're just part of a gas cloud now. And so they use that pattern buffer from that transport to reconstruct him. And then you've got issues where you have like transporter duplicates, where Riker has a transporter duplicate because like the beam was it like bounced back from like a certain atmospheric layer, and so he rematerialized in both places. And so you're right, it's not just your because like your molecules would be converted to energy and then reconstituted back into matter. So it has to be built from a pattern. There's the Scotty episode of TNG where he was hiding himself in a transport buffer for 75 years.
I love that episode. He was just like, I have been living in limbo.
Yeah. And so you're right that transporter accidents like that should not happen because they have that backup, but sometimes they want them to for drama.
I need it for the movie.
There's an episode of Voyager where Tuvok and Neelix get merged together in the transporter effect, and then Janeway murders Tuvix
totally
to get them back. So there's a lot of Yeah, there is inconsistency with how the transporter works. There's also the fact that you can't actually pinpoint every molecule of somebody with precision because of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. And it's my headcanon that actually what the transporter does is it scans your DNA and kind of just reconstitutes you from that. Sure. But there is in Technobabble an element of the transporter called the Heisenberg compensator. And when a producer was asked how the Heisenberg compensator works, he answered, "It works very well, thank you."
Yeah.
Awesome.
Like, stop asking questions. I am not a science man. I am a writer of a fiction thing.
Yeah,
but
that's kind of
when
amazing.
you talk about like the philosophical aspects of the transporter, like when you beam, does that kill you? Does that create a new version of you?
Yes.
But I feel like that. I feel like your answer to that depends on whether you are a dualist. If you believe that the mind is separate from the body, if you believe that you are an entity that is just attached to this physical thing, or if there is a more spiritual aspect to it. Now, I, as an atheist, don't hold to mind-body dualism. I think that you are your brain. And I also don't think that continuity of consciousness is required for you to be an entity, because if it were, we would die every night when we go to sleep.
Yeah, that is kind of the ultimate conclusion of the Trouble with Transporters video.
Yeah. So, but that's, you know,
the alternative, of course, being that you do die every night, and every day you're a new person that inherits the memories of the one before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
On a philosophical level, sure. Like our past selves are like dead versions of us. So look at us.
I will say that, like, I think that like you mentioned in passing the Ship of Theseus type thing. There are at least 3 that I can recall, different parts of the movie that touch on that. And I think that, like, I think it's a question that's asked that the movie doesn't really answer, and perhaps invites you to think about yourself, because it's like, first of all, you do have in the beginning, the invocation of the incidents with the teleporter, the transporter. Then you have like, the Enterprise has been completely reconstructed. It looks different, but it's still the Enterprise. And then there's even a picture on that same one. There's like a series of photographs that they show V'ger of, like, we're all the Enterprise,
which has a funny meta reference, because one of those is the Space Shuttle Enterprise. Yeah. Which was not named for just the naval tradition of naming ships Enterprise. It was specifically named because of a Star Trek fan write-in that NASA named it for the Starship Enterprise. So they have on display the Space Shuttle Enterprise on the ship that it was named for.
That's cool.
I love that. And then, of course, the third one is with Ilia. Like, all of Ilia's memories and thoughts and feelings are contained in this probe. Is this probe, at least in some part, Ilia? And the movie doesn't really answer that. It doesn't really seem like it wants to give an answer to that. But it is interesting that there's 3 different major points in the film that ask that question.
She's obviously a different person from just the Ilia probe is different from Ilia, very like on its face, but she still has, like, she's a new form of Ilia. She is not the Ilia that was killed by V'ger and reconstructed, but she is a form of her.
That begs the question, though, about the fucking transporter. Like, we could go on. We could literally go on for hours on just this point. Yeah.
If you have a traumatic event, are you no longer the same person that you were? And in some ways, yes, and in other ways, no. Like,
that's a good point.
Yeah. There's the question to think on at the end of this movie. It leaves you with lots of good feelings, and you get to think about something and scratch your head for a while.
And, we've got lots of more Star Treks to watch and have these little nerdy asides for.
On that, real quick, I have a quick question that I think should be clarifying for the audience as well. But how far are we going with the Star Trek movies? Are we going to watch all the J.J. Abrams ones too?
So the plan right now is this season we will be doing the original series movies. After that, We're going to go look at some other stuff. Haven't quite nailed down what's all in the future. I mean, obviously we've got, actually after this, we'll be doing Andor season 2.
Andor, yeah.
But after that, we'll work it out. But we will eventually get to all of the Star Trek movies. Yes. Just, pacing them out. Don't want to shoot my load all in one go.
If we want to bring back some rage again, we could watch those J.J. Abrams ones, and I'd have some strong opinions about a few of them.
We'll get there. My final thought, I would say, is that I'm really glad that this was a movie and not Phase 2. I can't say for certain what the world would be if we got Phase 2 instead of TNG. Maybe it would have been amazing. What I do know, though, is that I'm really glad that we didn't keep Stephen Collins on for multiple things in Star Trek, considering that guy may be better known as the dad from Seventh Heaven. And I'm not going to get into it, but if you know anything about the dad from Seventh Heaven, you're like, ooh, yeah, there's a reason that show still isn't on the air. There is a reason that that none of the actors are getting residuals from it. And it's good that he's only in one Star Trek and not more.
I'll have to find out why.
Yeah, Google for yourself, viewer beware.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, last thoughts from anyone?
No, I mean, honestly, I'm really, really excited to watch the rest of the Star Trek movies. I love Star Trek. I love this movie, and I'm excited for the other ones. So, yeah, good movie. Very interesting themes. Sci-fi is very cool. Lets us explore some interesting ideas about ourselves. So yeah, just good movie. Looking forward to more. All right. Next time, we will be journeying into the Wrath of Khan. Amazing. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I've been Gayfesh. I'm Moss. And I'm DemonMama. Live long and prosper. Bye. Bye.